Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to record my full support to the 2020-2021 Appropriation Bill presented by the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and member for Micoud South. This support, Mr. Speaker, will be justified shortly when I speak to the policy direction of the government. Mr. Speaker, in my contribution today, I will firstly speak to the policies of this government as delivered in the policy speech by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Secondly, I will elaborate more on the policies and programs of the Department of Physical Planning. And thirdly, I will expand on matters relating to my constituency of Soufrière-Fontaine-Jacques. Mr. Speaker, before I make my comments on the Appropriation Bill of 2020-21, I need to thank the Almighty God for His goodness, faithfulness, and blessings, and the overall health and strength in my service to the people of Soufrière-Fontaine-Jacques and by extension, St. Lucia. I pray perpetually for continued benedictions in my daily pursuits. Mr. Speaker, I thank my family for the outstanding support, understanding, love, and patience throughout the years. Their support is immeasurable. I thank, in a very special way, my precious people of Soufrière-Fontaine-Jacques. They place their confidence and trust in me, and for this, I will be forever grateful and honored. Their love and encouragement fortify me daily as we work together. Mr. Speaker, I want to reassure them that I am working obstinately daily as their parliamentary representative. Mr. Speaker, I would like to express gratitude to my friends, campaign team, supporters, and well-wishers for caring and supporting me wholeheartedly to ensure that we deliver on our promises and commitments. I also express my gratitude to the wider diaspora for the support and thoughtfulness. Mr. Speaker, my motto, one of us for all of us, is one I treat with great value. And my objective has always been to serve each and every constituent regardless of personal classifications. Mr. Speaker, I now speak to the policy statement delivered by the Honorable Prime Minister under the theme, New Challenges, New Opportunities for Building a Stronger St. Lucia Together. The Prime Minister's presentation demonstrated resilience, inclusiveness, social engineering, and expressive depiction of appreciation and policies for economic revitalization. Mr. Speaker, this is the inspiration that is required to foster development and support to the citizenry of this country as we grapple the effects of COVID-19. The compassionate programs will help tremendously as we adapt to the challenges of the new normal. Mr. Speaker, this global medical pandemic have affected the world without any warning. And if I may say, have created an economic pandemic. Mr. Speaker, it is in times like these, in such difficult times, leaderships are tested. However, Mr. Speaker, as daunting as the task appears, I have full confidence that we have the right leader at the right time. Mr. Speaker, through you, I need to personally and on behalf of all St. Lucians thank the Prime Minister for his leadership and management during the breakout of the coronavirus. We can see the unyielding compassion in the craft of this budget. I thank him for being relevant at this unprecedented time of economic uncertainty as a result of COVID-19. As I dissect the presentation by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank him for the many ongoing proposed initiatives that will benefit the constituency of Soufrière-Font-Saint-Jacques. And Mr. Speaker, I am extremely pleased with the proposed duty-free concessions for the taxi drivers and minibus operators of Soufrière, of St. Lucia, of which those in Soufrière will surely benefit. Minibus operators plying the 4F, the 3F, and 4G. Mr. Speaker, I applaud the Prime Minister in mobilizing this economic response to return our country and the economy to its mobility pre-COVID. Mr. Speaker, after listening to the leader of the opposition tonight, I came to two conclusions, Mr. Speaker. Listening to the leader of the opposition and the member for Castries East, I could clearly tell any St. Lucian after tonight that the leader of the opposition could sell ice to an Eskimo. With his words tonight. Second, Mr. Speaker, it looks as if that the leader of the opposition is contemplating a special ministry if he happens to be on this side of the House. A ministry which I will call the Ministry of Disinformation, Propaganda, and Manipulation. Mr. Speaker, when you listen to the leader of the opposition, nothing has changed for 4 years. Nothing. The same old tactics, same chauvinistic commentary, rehashing of the same political rhetoric, the failed policies, Mr. Speaker, fruitless recommendations, and unproductive ideas. He has nothing inspiring, Mr. Speaker, nothing creative or innovative to talk about. In his own words, Mr. Speaker, flashing mirrors. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the people of this country will not fall for his propaganda, mistruths, and misinformation. Mr. Speaker, at this point in time, we need to dissect what this government inherited in 2016 from the members opposite and what our policies have been able to achieve to remedy some of the many maladies which was created by the members opposite when we came into office on June the 6th, 2016, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, we need to look at real GDP growth. And now we have to go back to 2011, Mr. Speaker. 2011, when the members opposite assumed office, we had a GDP growth, we had experienced growth of 3%. We left them with an economy that had grown by 4.3%, Mr. Speaker. 4.3%. In 2012, economic growth minus 0.1%. In 2013, Mr. Speaker, minus 2.0%. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, there was no drought, there was no financial crisis, there was no fuel at over $140 US a barrel, and there was no COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. All we had in 2013, if my memory serves me well, was the Christmas Eve trough. And growth minus 2.0. 2014, Mr. Speaker, growth of 1.3%. 2015, growth of 0.1%, Mr. Speaker. From 4.3, after 4 years, 0.1% on the decline. 2016, Mr. Speaker, we came in June 2016, we did a better job at their budget and managed to get 3.4% economic growth. 3.4%, Mr. Speaker. In 2017, under the leadership of the member for Mikud South, growth of 3.5%. 2018, growth of 2.6%. 2019, Mr. Speaker, growth of 1.7%. They could have never touched the 1.7, which was our lowest growth rate this year, 2019, because of the shocks of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. And the economy was already projected to grow to approximately 3.5% in 2019, Mr. Speaker. So when you heard the members opposite, when you heard the leader of the opposition speak tonight of his economics, these are the numbers, black and white. It is there for everyone to see, everyone to dissect, to compare, and to contrast, Mr. Speaker. We go to unemployment, Mr. Speaker. When we came in office in 2016, unemployment was over 24%, Mr. Speaker. In 2019, unemployment 16.8%, Mr. Speaker. These are the facts. And it is shameful, Mr. Speaker, that the leader of the opposition could stand in this honorable house tonight and make a dangerous statement to say that members on the governing side are laughing at persons who have lost their jobs because of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. That's a dangerous and shameful statement. And the leader of the opposition needs to take that statement back, Mr. Speaker. Because we on this side emphasize with every single person who have lost their job as a result of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. And we have a caring Prime Minister, a caring Minister of Finance, and members on this team who are doing everything to help every single St. Lucian recover from the damages, the ravages of COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, in an attempt for him to score cheap political points, he needs to say something to attempt to mislead the population that we are on this side of the house laughing at everybody out there. Shame on you, leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, we go to youth unemployment. 2016, over 40%. 2019, 31.6%. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts. Debt to GDP ratio, when we came in, it was over 61%, over the prudential limit of the ECCB. In 2019, debt to GDP ratio, 59.6%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us move on. We are dissecting, we are comparing, we are contrasting, Mr. Speaker. And we are going to let the people of St. Lucia know who the failures at managing this economy was. Mr. Speaker, we move over now to national security and justice. I am going to look at some of the sectors, Mr. Speaker, what we inherited and what we have achieved under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister and member for Mikud South, Mr. Speaker. When we came in, Mr. Speaker, the forensic lab was closed. No forensic lab operational in St. Lucia. We had no DPP for years. We had a demoralized police force. Demoralized police force. We had all the marine boats dysfunctional because of engines. They couldn't buy engines. They couldn't repair the engines, Mr. Speaker. Defective equipment. Inadequate courts. Judges and magistrates. We had a backlog of cases, Mr. Speaker. What has happened, Mr. Speaker, from 2016 to 2020? We have recommissioned, we have opened the forensic lab, Mr. Speaker. We have reinstated the Office of the DPP, Mr. Speaker. We have created additional courtrooms for our judges and our magistrates, Mr. Speaker. We have purchased over 25 new vehicles for the police officers, Mr. Speaker. We have handed new furniture, gym equipment, and all of that to the police officers, Mr. Speaker. We have upgraded the communication equipment for the police, Mr. Speaker. We have installed CCTV cameras from Grosley to Castries to help combat crime on the island, Mr. Speaker. And we are now, Mr. Speaker, in the process of constructing a state-of-the-art police headquarters and the halls of justice for our lawmen and women in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, all what I have said there regarding the police, security, justice, all of that was done, and we still, after, Mr. Speaker, we delivered on our promise of 5 to stay alive. We were able to achieve all of that, and more. I have more to say about what we have achieved by reducing VAT by 2.5%. We increased on the subsidy for schools, feeding program and buses. We reduced the increase in the license fees by 50%. We gave an amnesty on property tax for 3 years, and an amnesty for 4 years, and an amnesty on hospital bills for 3 years. And we were still able to achieve more in 4 years on the justice and security than the members opposite. Mr. Speaker, on the education, what did the member for Mikud North inherited? One of the biggest problems that the member for Mikud North and this government inherited, Mr. Speaker, was school plans, the condition of our schools. And Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia need to know that under the previous administration, where the leader of the opposition was the so-called Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Infrastructure, Ports and Transport, where the allocation for school repairs was placed, only $1 million, Mr. Speaker, was allocated for school supplies for the whole island. And correct me if I am wrong, Madam Minister, member for Mikud North, but I believe we have almost 100 schools on the island. Okay? So it means that, Mr. Speaker, less than $10,000 was allocated for each school to be repaired in the financial year. And the leader of the opposition was the one who sat in cabinet. He approved the budget of $1 million, and he presided over the allocation as the Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. And you want to come and tell people you love our children? You love the people? $1 million? Classrooms with no doors. I experienced it in Supra comprehensive, toilets in a mess, plumbing in a mess. They could not even go and put on the lights in the classrooms because of leakage from the roof. Shocks at Supra comprehensive school, Mr. Speaker. Les États, termites, Foster Jacques termites on all the computer lab everywhere. Less than $10,000 per school. And you have the audacity to come in this house and talk about we love the children, the people of St. Lucia. This is the member who loves and cares about the students and the children of St. Lucia. Because over the past 3 years, Mr. Speaker, over the past 3 years, we have spent over $40 million on school repairs, Mr. Speaker. Over $40 million. But you, as the Minister of Infrastructure, $1 million. You see, Mr. Speaker, one thing they should know, Mr. Speaker, is not to come in this honorable house with the market steps economics. Leave your market steps economics out there. You see your pianomics, your canenomics, okay, your lenomics, leave that on the market steps. When we come in this honorable house We come here to debate the issues, the people's issues, not your market step economics. Mr. Speaker, we move on. And I can go on with all the other achievements of the Minister of Education. Besides the $40 million spent on the schools, $40 million, the increased bandwidth at the schools for the CNET and the CASIP, upgrading of the 13 technical joint labs at the secondary schools, the construction of the 2 blocks in Choiseul, all under the leadership of the Minister of Education and the member from Mikuno. Mr. Speaker, I'm coming to Supra later. Mr. Speaker, I'm going now to infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine what the member for Castries North had to undergo when he inherited that ministry? You had a Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, where you could hardly see anything he did for road maintenance in this country. Potholes, dilapidated roads throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. But after 2016, with the member for Castries North as the Minister for Infrastructure, we have seen a major difference in road maintenance and rehabilitation in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Under the member for Castries North, Mr. Speaker, we are now undertaking one of the largest road infrastructural rehabilitation projects in St. Lucia. Over $200 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you could remember, all over St. Lucia, after Hurricane Thomas in 2010, 2011, United Workers' Party lose the election, you had what you call balconies all over the road. He spent 5 years in the Ministry of Infrastructure. How many did he repair? In Soufrière, in Marigot, all over the island. And I know the member for Castries North, in his presentation, he will tell us all of his achievements and he'll let us know what it is. There was 2 at Touvaillant. No, 1 at Touvaillant, 1 Lower Laho. It had to take him to do it. Since 2010, it was there. There was 1 at Marigot. I think it was in your constituency, your area, member for Castries Southeast. It has taken the now Minister of Infrastructure and member for Castries North to get it done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have to go to the Silton. $1.5 million, Mr. Speaker, allocated to the Silton for the year. That's what we inherited. And they claim they love the people of St. Lucia. So you love the people of Vexton, where that is so prone to flooding. The people of Dennery, the people of Soufrière Saint Jacques. You all love them. $1.5 million allocated. But under this government, this Minister of Finance, each and every year, we have allocated over $4 million for the Silton. You are the worst Minister of Infrastructure in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, under infrastructure, because that was his portfolio, I have to touch on HIA.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
I have
Honorable
to touch
member.
on HIA, Mr. Speaker. 5 years. It took you 5 years. All you kept talking about was PPP. You could not lay 1 block in the ground.
Honorable
You
member.
had to take this government,
Honorable member.
this
Honorable
minister.
member Soufrière. That is fine. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker is the leader of the opposition, you know. The leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, it had to take the member for Castries North and this government under the leadership of this Prime Minister to put things in place. And today we have started the HIA redevelopment the biggest infrastructural project in the history of this country, Mr. Speaker. And it is a project, it is an effort that is going, like the Prime Minister said, that is going to be owned, managed, and operated by St. Lucians. Not by any foreigner, for 40 years. And the same method you're talking against us using, the ADT, the tax to pay it, that is the same thing you are going to do. Because you are going to raise the tax from $25 to $55 for the developer. Yeah, 65. I stand corrected. So what is the difference? What is the difference? And you spoke against the tax. Oh, the arrivals, that would affect arrivals. Arrivals would decrease. What did we get? What did we see, Mr. Speaker? Over 420,000 recorded stay-over arrivals. And tonight again, he's still being a pessimist. Talking about, oh, tourism, talking about this in the budget, and where is the tourism, where they're coming from. It's as if to him, tourists will no longer come to St. Lucia. We had 9/11. After 9/11, tourists didn't come back. Is the pandemic going to last forever? We have to live with the pandemic, live with COVID. But life is going to get back to normal, whether it is 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And tourists are going to come back to St. Lucia. You are aspiring to be Prime Minister and you've been so pessimistic. Come on. Come on, lead up your position.
Honorable member, speak to the chair, please.
Mr. Speaker, you're welcome to Soufrière every single day. As a matter of fact, when you come to Soufrière, allow me to take you around and show you what representation is all about. And in a while, very shortly, I will show you what representation is all about. Very shortly. Healthcare, Mr. Speaker, what we inherited. Healthcare. Spoke about OKEU earlier, Mr. Speaker. But what he failed to tell the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, that they spent over $200,000 just to put a name on OKEU and they couldn't open it. Over $200,000. Because they knew of all the issues affecting, plaguing OKEU. With all the generators, the air conditioning, the canteen. And they knew of the cost to operate that new hospital, which was almost doubling that of Victoria. And they did not have that money. And they did not have that money. And he's coming and talk about OKU. We got it open. The workers on this side got the job done. And
Honorable members, Honorable Member cast yourself, Prime Minister. Honorable, no. No. Honorable members, once I'm hearing, I take offense to certain statements. Persons out there may not hear, but once I'm hearing, I think it's too loud. Now, let's get back on. Honorable member. Honorable. Proceed, Honorable Member Soufrière.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the protection from members opposite. I know I'm breaking a nerve tonight. You see, Mr. Speaker, when you speak the truth, this is the reaction that you get from them. This is not propaganda. This is not propaganda. This is not political rhetoric. These are facts, Mr. Speaker. And that is why they behave in the way they behave tonight. Mr. Speaker, we go to St. Jude's. How many dates did they give for the opening of St. Jude's? 5, 6 dates. Over $100 million was spent, Mr. Speaker. And almost every single thing was flawed in the hospital. But I know, Mr. Speaker, under the leadership of the member for Castries Southeast, we are going to get a state-of-the-art hospital in the South for the people of the South, Mr. Speaker. Rest assured. And you Mr. Speaker, the same leader of the opposition who talks about St. Jude's. I don't recall one day he stood in this honorable house and asked his government to finish St. Jude's for the people of the South. Not once, Mr. Speaker. But today, he wants to talk about St. Jude's because he's sitting on the other side of the house, Mr. Speaker. Okay? Out of convenience, finish St. Jude's. Mr. Speaker, on the health, achievements on the health.
Honorable members.
On the health, Mr. Speaker, over 14 primary health care facilities rehabilitated by this administration, Mr. Speaker. Neglect. Sufra Hospital suffered 2 fires, repaired, furniture, equipment replaced, Mr. Speaker. Additional dialysis chairs at OKEU Wellness Center, Mr. Speaker. By this government, under the leadership of this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. And you want to come and talk about health care? Mr. Speaker, tourism. Let's go to tourism. What we inherited. Mr. Speaker. And where we were pre-COVID. Over 1.2 million visitor arrivals. Mr. Speaker, rebranding of St. Lucia, let her inspire you. You go to London, you go to New York, you go to Miami, Atlanta, all over. St. Lucia, let her inspire you on cabs, billboards all over the place. All of a sudden, St. Lucia is more relevant than ever before. Why? Because of the efforts, the hard work, the commitment, the dedication of the member from Ulster Canaries, the Minister of Tourism. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition was once Minister of Tourism. You need to tell this honorable house, tell the people of St. Lucia, what was your record in tourism? Tell us what was your record in tourism. Mr. Speaker, I go to youth and sports, Mr. Speaker. Our youth and sports. We all know what we inherited, Mr. Speaker. I mean, my good friend from Denver North. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but we all know what we inherited, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I must commend the member for Denver South for his stellar work as Minister of Youth and Sports in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it's amazing. Mr. Speaker, it's amazing that the leader of the opposition comes to this honorable house tonight and talks of a toilet in Masha. After 25 years as parliamentary representative, you come in with toilet talk in a debate. You're talking about Masha grounds. How many people even can recall Masha grounds and Mendufili Park? Because of your neglect. Because you have not done anything to transform the constituency of Caste Resist. 25 years as parliamentary representative. You should have kept Masha, honorable member. Masha should have been a city within a city. That's what Masha should have been. You should have come in here tonight and talk of high rises and mixed use properties, ways to empower the people of Masha. Not about a toilet or park. You're the leader of the opposition. 25 years of representation. Mr. Speaker, if any of the members on this side of the House could represent the constituency for 25 years and cannot show any major form of transformation, I, as a member of this government, will ask them to bow out of elected politics. I will ask them to bow out, Mr. Speaker. 25 years, and you cannot transform Masha. So all of that tells you, Mr. Speaker, that the member for Castries is the leader of the opposition. He has held 3 different portfolios. Minister of Commerce, and I'm coming to that shortly, infrastructure, tourism, and he has failed in every portfolio. Mr. Speaker, on the commerce, Mr. Speaker, and the member for Schwezel articulated what he has done, what he is doing in commerce. If you look at the amendment to the VAT Act for manufacturers, as a former Minister of Commerce, you, not him, you should have done that. You all introduced VAT. And you should have seen that this amendment, this section of the act needed to be amended. It had to take the member from Schwezel to come into cabinet to get it done. You failed. The amendment to the fiscal incentives for the professional sectors. This is something that, as former Minister of Commerce, you should have enacted years ago. It had to take the member for Schwezel to come to this honorable House to get it done. So, Mr. Speaker, talks about the youth economy, and the member for Schwezel is so right. 23 years you're in this honorable House, now you're talking of youth economy? Because you're on this other side of the House, all of a sudden it's convenient to talk of the youth and the youth economy? Huh? 15 years in government, 23 years as a parliamentary rep. Now you're talking about the youth economy? Come to Sufra and see youth economy. Come to Hummingbird Beach. Come to Hummingbird Beach and see youth economy. Come and see the infrastructure which is in place for the youth economy. Ask Fritage Jeunesse, ask Mystic Breeze Restaurant, ask the owners of the spa, Blue Anchor Restaurant, ask all of them, and they'll tell you what the youth economy is. Go on Old Trafford, go to the concessionaires, and they will tell you what the youth economy is. Not now. Not now, Mr. Speaker. Talks of victimization. That's the word he loves, Mr. Speaker, victimization. But he has short memory. Or I don't know if he's suffering from amnesia, what it is. You have a victim of victimization by you all right here in the member for Castries Central. And you were deputy. You were deputy prime minister when it happened. And you talk of victimization? You all fired over 20 CCC workers. Victimization? In Sufre, not you.
Honorable member.
Right in Sufra, Mr. Speaker, deceased Archie Monrose. In 97, he had 2 trucks, garbage trucks, for garbage collection. They victimized him. The trucks stayed there, they got rotten. And today you want to come in this honorable House and cry victimization? You bringing up about CDP, you're not getting this, you're not getting that. I wasn't there for 5 years ago in opposition as member for Castries East, January, Mikud North, Castries North. What did they get? What did they get? You were Deputy Prime Minister. You were Deputy Prime Minister. You see? The problem with the members opposite, Mr. Speaker, is that they believe they have an entitlement to govern this country. That's the belief, Mr. Speaker. They have an entitlement. But they fail to realize, Mr. Speaker, that entitlement was taken away from them on June the 6th, 2016. It was taken away. And, Mr. Speaker, they are going to stay in a position for a very long time, Mr. Speaker. Very, very long time. But, Mr. Speaker, their behavior is just about fear. Fearful of the Prime Minister. Fearful of his vision, his abilities, and performance as this country's leader and Prime Minister. Fear. Mr. Speaker, the members opposite attacked the Prime Minister from 2014 when he became political leader of the United Workers' Party. And whilst they continued attacking, that charade of attacking him, the Prime Minister and team workers were getting ready to assume governance of this country. And 2016 came, what happened? We are seated on this side of the house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, some said, Mr. Speaker, some said the only seat that the honorable member for Mikud South would have won was his toilet seat. Others said that over the dead body, you would enter the chambers of this house. But I don't know if it's a ghost I'm seeing tonight, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
But Mr. Speaker, 2016 until today, the attacks have continued, Mr. Speaker. And despite all the attacks, Mr. Speaker, on the Honorable Prime Minister and member for Mikud South, Mr. Speaker, what have we seen? 4 years of economic growth, reduced unemployment, reduction of debt to GDP ratio, buoyancy in the economy, increase in revenue. All of that, Mr. Speaker, pre-COVID. So why is there keeping noise? Why is there attacking? Why is there spreading hatred and bigotry, Mr. Speaker, and division? Mr. Speaker, we are working. We are doing our job, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, isn't that a clear diagnosis of insanity? Insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Attacking Alan Shasley. 2013, 2016, what was the result? And I can guarantee you all, sooner than later, the result is going to be the same. Keep on attacking. Keep on attacking. Mr. Speaker, we had a leader of the opposition during the pandemic, medical crisis, national crisis, world crisis. What did he say to the people of St. Lucia? St. Lucia was the worst prepared country in the Caribbean for COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. And today everybody could see for themselves how St. Lucia fared from COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. But you see, Mr. Speaker, what he didn't tell the people, Mr. Speaker, that he, amongst all of them on this side of the house, he is the least prepared to be Prime Minister. The least prepared to be Prime Minister. That's what he didn't tell the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. You know why, Mr. Speaker? Because of his track record. Because of his track record. A track record of failure, failed policies, failed ideas, Mr. Speaker. And what he does, he comes to this honorable house in an attempt to recycle the same failed policies. See, Mr. Speaker? What he does not know, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable members, honorable members. First,
leader of the opposition, you know, Mr. Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, whilst he is eyeing the job of Prime Minister with one eye, Mr. Speaker, the other eye is watching fearlessly over his shoulder, Mr. Speaker, to see who is going to come out of purgatory to lead again. He doesn't tell us those things, Mr. Speaker. But, according to them. Mr. Speaker, what we have on this opposite side of the House, Mr. Speaker, in the members opposite, we have the prophets of doom and gloom.
honorable member,
We have, Mr. Speaker,
you have 15 minutes in which to complete your presentation.
we have the enemies of progress, Mr. Speaker, on this other side. We have little wannabes on this other side, Mr. Speaker. Wannabe prime ministers. And Mr. Speaker, on this other side of the House, the opposite side, Mr. Speaker, we have a group of desperate politicians with a distinction in economic destruction. That's what we have on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. What do we have on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker? We have the workers and builders of a strong, resilient, and performing economy, Mr. Speaker. And I know, Mr. Speaker, and the good people of St. Lucia knows that the man and team for the job at this unprecedented time is the Honorable Prime Minister and member for Mikud South with the team of able men and women on this side of the House. Because, Mr. Speaker, our track record have shown that the United Workers' Party is the only party to get St. Lucia out of difficult moments. And we shall overcome the ravages of COVID-19 with this Prime Minister as our Commander-in-Chief, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you've given me 15 minutes, but I have a lot to say on my ministry, on the policy of my ministry, as well as Soufre. But, Mr. Speaker, rest assured, we will have many more debates in this Honorable House in the weeks and months ahead. And we on this side, we are going to expose the failures of the members on the opposite at every opportunity to the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let me move on to my constituency. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, a share 3 years ago, I presented in this House a presentation themed Soufre Intervention Vision 2020. Mr. Speaker, at my last debate on the Appropriation Bill 2019-2020, I updated this Honorable House with the progress made on this vision plan. At my last update, only the Hummingbird Beach Park and the additional pools at the Sulphur Springs were completed. Today, Mr. Speaker, I seek your indulgence to report to the House on the progress made to date. And Mr. Speaker, before I go to my presentation, permit me to thank the Honorable Prime Minister and Cabinet colleagues for making Soufre the model for socio-economic development in this country. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, in mathematics, we were taught of the concept of inequalities. Mr. Speaker, to refresh your memory, it is a lesson on the more than and the less than signs. Allow me to use this concept to make a contrast, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mathematically, we were taught that 20 is more than 4. And likewise, 20 years cannot be less than 4 years. However, Mr. Speaker, the SLP continued to teach us the opposite. Mr. Speaker, the representation of the St. Lucia Labour Party for 20 consecutive years in Soufrière Fosse Jacques is less than 4 years of your humble servant's representation. Mr. Speaker, we continue and we now look at the Soufrière Main Bridge. Can you take a close look at it, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the beginning of the transformation of my beautiful town of Soufrière began when the one-way main bridge was demolished by a UWP administration in 2011. Okay? And what day? The Saturday before elections. And this is a candidate who did not put his political interest over the people. The people of Soufrière needed a two-way bridge, and he said, break the bridge. And today they are seeing the value of that bridge. They are seeing the value of that bridge, Mr. Speaker. They are seeing the value of the bridge. Mr. Speaker, we continue with the rebirth of Soufrière Carnival. Soufrière has had a rich history of its portrayal of Carnival, from representatives winning the pageant segment on the national level, sometimes consecutive years. Not the same person. We've had about 3 persons from Soufrière who won the local Carnival Queen Show and then came up national to win it. After an 8-year hiatus, Mr. Speaker, of no carnival in the town, the Soufrière Events Committee was created to revamp and revitalize cultural activities and bring back the enjoyment of this art form back to the community. It has been hosted for 3 consecutive years, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, it was unable to be hosted this year. As a matter of fact, Sunday and Monday of this week would have been Soufrière Carnival, Mr. Speaker. We also revamped what we call the Lesa Soufrière, which was an activity similar to the library Festilaboui, every last Saturday of the year. Mr. Speaker, we have the farmers market, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we believe that every human being is dignified. And Mr. Speaker, as we speak, in 1918, 102 years ago, to be exact, the first market was established on High Street in Soufrière. And Mr. Speaker, you have, after High Street, vendors moved to King Street, to Arthur Louis Street. The last place they moved to, Mr. Speaker, was next to the cemetery in the fisheries complex. And today, Mr. Speaker, the people of Soufrière, the vendors of Soufrière, are very proud and happy to be housed in a state-of-the-art farmers market. Who started what? I'll come to that. Mr. Speaker, we have the Soufrière bus terminal, and again, Mr. Speaker, our drivers, our minibus operators, they were all over the place, Mr. Speaker, and through consultation with them, Mr. Speaker, we have now been able to place them in a central location.
Honorable members, allow the member to be heard.
Central location, Mr. Speaker, where we have probably the only bus terminal in St. Lucia today, in Soufrière, Mr. Speaker. And I wish the members opposite, especially the member for Vieux-Fort South, would consult me. I would probably give him some ideas as to how to get this going in Vieux-Fort South, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have the Soufrière Square redesign. Mr. Speaker, this project has been controversial. We are not in the business of claiming projects, Mr. Speaker. But when we saw the model construction happening at the Soufrière Square, we had to put the project on hold for review. And the review, Mr. Speaker, warranted a redesign as the previous design did not conform to our vision, the economic strategic plan, cultural and historic preservation for Soufrière. And we are extremely pleased, everyone is very delighted, Mr. Speaker, to have a state-of-the-art square in Soufrière right now. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we have the Freedom Monument erected there as well. Mr. Speaker, Soufrière Police Station rehabilitation. We continue to, Mr. Speaker, highlight the neglect of the public infrastructure by the former administration. And you could see the old Soufrière Police Station, what it used to be, Mr. Speaker. And with assistance from the Supra Regional Development Foundation and the Architectural Department of the Ministry of Physical Planning, we were able to do a beautiful rehabilitation of the Supra Police Station for our frontline workers, the Supra Police. Mr. Speaker, we also did rehabilitation of the Foster Jacques playing field. This is a playing field where the youth of Foster Jacques were basically playing on pebbles. And as you can see, Mr. Speaker, we've done a wonderful job in rehabilitating this playing field. And I look forward, Mr. Speaker, to put in two lights on the Foster Jacques playing field at the end of this financial year. CDP projects, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we touch a wide section of the constituency under the CDP with footpaths, drainage, bridge rails, computer labs, refurbishment, feeder roads, etc. So areas, Mr. Speaker, like Bouton, Fonjean-Lib, Foster Jacques, and other communities in the constituency will be receiving attention this financial year under the CDP allocation. Ongoing projects, Mr. Speaker, we have the Supra Mini Stadium. And again, I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister for Youth and Sports for selecting Supra as the first constituency amongst the 5 constituencies to have this infrastructural project in Supra. Sport infrastructural project, Mr. Speaker. And you can see, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have a FIFA-regulated size playing field, synthetic turf. We are going to have an IAAF 400-meter 8-lane synthetic turf track, installation of the perimeter wall, Mr. Speaker, in the first phase, new lights, Mr. Speaker, and the second phase is going to be the netball court, the 25-meter Olympic swimming pool, and another court for volleyball, netball, and lawn tennis. Mr. Speaker, Ruby Cricket Ground, we have acquired the lands at Ruby for the cricket field, Mr. Speaker. We have cleared the lands, Mr. Speaker, and works to level it to get the playing field done, the grassing and the pitch will be commencing very soon, Mr. Speaker. New development roads, Mr. Speaker. These roads were constructed in the 1980s and no attention was ever given to those roads for the past 20 years. I'm extremely pleased, delighted that we kept this campaign promise to rehabilitate the new development roads, and the residents are extremely happy, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to the completion of this project in the next couple of months. New initiatives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Old Trafford redevelopment phase 2 is to be undertaken this financial year. Again, this is going to be a CDP project where we're going to have additional concession booths for our young entrepreneurs in Soufrière. We also have the Palmis Road vending facility, Mr. Speaker, where again additional concession booths will be constructed on the Palmis-Fombenier Road for our young persons. Right there, we have one right opposite the home of Miss Brenda Regis. So the blue one, you see the baby blue one, this is going to be the one for Miss Brenda Regis and her many young children, so that they can establish their bar, their food cafe, whatever it is, right there on the Palmis Road, Mr. Speaker. Zeno multipurpose court, Mr. Speaker. This was a promise made in 2011 to the people of Zeno. And this financial year, again on the CDP, we are going to build a multipurpose court at Zeno for the people of Zeno with washroom facility as well. Also, Mr. Speaker, with assistance from the Supra Foundation, we are going to be building Foster Jacques washroom below the court at the Foster Jacques area there, Mr. Speaker. It was a court which was built under the previous administration, but there was no washroom, changing room facility. So we are going to get this done, Mr. Speaker. And we have there the floor plan. Also, the washroom facility is going to come with a space where the Foster Jacques Youth and Sports Council will have a small office as well. Mr. Speaker, I am delighted that the EQUIP project under the Ministry of Education is going to be constructing a 3-story, I believe, D block in Soufrière to replace the old annex buildings, which you could see right there. And I want to thank the Minister of Education and the member for Mikunov for this intervention. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., Mr. Speaker, there is going to be consultation by her department at the Soufrière Primary School with residents regarding this intervention at Soufrière Comprehensive Secondary School. Mr. Speaker, we have the old town hall building in Soufrière, which is due for demolition. We have been in talks with interested parties for a bold agreement where we are going to build an administrative complex in this facility so that we could bring in all the different government offices and so on in this building. Basically, it becomes a one-stop shop where all government services will be provided for the people of Soufrière Fosse Jacques, Mr. Speaker. Additional initiatives, Mr. Speaker, under the road projects, we have the Esperance Diamond Road. I want to assure the people of Esperance Diamond, Mr. George, Tatum, Jones, and everybody in Esperance, Mocha, Fosse Jacques, Baden, Esperance Diamond Road will be commencing very soon. The Zeno Road, Mr. Speaker, the people of Zeno, your road is going to be done very soon. The Baden Belfort Road, Mr. Speaker, all of that is going to be done, Mr. Speaker, under the OECC road projects. The Buto Road below the school, Mr. Speaker, and the continuation of the feeder roads in Baden and also the feeder road of Diego Zaminot in Fosse Jacques. Mr. Speaker, we have also acquired the lands for the new Soufrière Hospital, and we are hoping that, again, through a bold agreement, we can start the land preparation and commence construction of the Soufrière Hospital, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, these are some of my achievements, ongoing projects, and new initiatives to take place this financial year in Soufrière. And, Mr. Speaker, by the looks of it, we can all agree that in 4 years, I have accomplished this government with the assistance and the guidance of the members on this side of the House and the Honorable Prime Minister. We have accomplished more in Soufrière in 4 years than the 5 years that the Labour Party delivered to the entire country of St. Lucia, Mr. Mr. Speaker, in closing, let me express, Mr. Speaker, let me express thanks to the Prime Minister.
Honourable members, allow the member to complete his presentation.
In closing, Mr. Speaker, allow me to express thanks to the Prime Minister for his partnership and considerations to my lovely constituency of Soufrière Fosse Jacques. I take this opportunity to thank my cabinet colleagues, the men and women on this side of the House, for their support and assistance from their respective ministries. Mr. Speaker, I thank enormously my colleague minister in my cluster, the member for Babono, for his support and cooperation. I also thank, Mr. Speaker, the staff of the Department of Physical Planning, my permanent secretary, deputy permanent secretary, the chief architect, and the heads of all sections in the department. I look forward, Mr. Speaker, to our continued concerted efforts in the development of this country. Mr. Speaker, I also thank in a special way the Soufrière Police, Mayor Pius Gangadin, the board and staff of the Soufrière Constituency Council, the directors, management and staff of the Soufrière Foundation, staff in the office of the district representative, the chairman and management and staff of the Soufrière Marine Management Association, SMMA, Soufrière Events Committee, office of the district education officer, and the principals of all the schools in Soufrière, District 8, the Fosse Jacques Development Committee, the Soufrière Fisheries Cooperative, the religious denominations, the Youth and Sport Council of Soufrière and the Fosse Jacques Sports Club, the Football League of Soufrière, the business community of Soufrière, Mr. Speaker, the SLHTA local chapter of Soufrière, the land and sea operators of Soufrière, the minibus operators of Soufrière, and the vendors and all the other agencies within the constituency, Mr. Speaker, for the contributions towards community development. Mr. Speaker, I say thank you, and honorable members, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your indulgence. And once again, Mr. Speaker, I will fully support this 2020-2021 appropriation bill. Thank you.
Honourable members,